Up next on Art Rocks, a South Louisiana artist icon who has mastered many mediums.
Stained glass started in about the 8th century in Europe. And at that time they had about 12 colors of glass. Today, through modern chemistry, we have over 1,400 different colors.
Transferring a passion for sports from the playing field to the canvas. And deer, bears and a bunch of other beasts on exhibit at LSU. That's all about to happen on Art Rocks.
Support for this program is provided by Georgia Pacific Port Hudson operations. Like the impulse that drives an artist's creativity, Georgia Pacific's 850 Louisiana employees are driven to produce quality paper products for your home and business. With additional support from the Renaissance Baton Rouge Hotel, centrally located for business and pleasure travel, the Renaissance offers intrigue, style, and southern hospitality. And by the Watermark Baton Rouge. Art, history, and commerce come together in the heart of downtown Baton Rouge at the Watermark, located in the historic Louisiana Trust and Savings Bank building. And by Prescience Point Capital Management, a fact-based private investment manager using forensic investigation to benefit clients. Research with impact. And by Ann Conley Fine Art, with the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Hello, welcome to Art Rocks with me, James Fox Smith from Country Roads Magazine. Allow me to introduce an artist who lives and creates in Covington, but whose stained glass windows set spaces aglow for hundreds of miles around. Not only that, but his blown glass, metal and painted compositions can be found in collections all over the United States. For almost half a century, Paulo Dufour has been creating art. He learned many of his core techniques from his acclaimed father and Baton Rouge Gallery co-founder, Paulo Dufour. The older Dufour built a first-rate glass program at LSU and worked in several other mediums along the way. So here's Paulo to share a chapter from his own story.
My father, Paulo Dufour, in the late 60s, got a commission to do some stained glass windows for a church in Baton Rouge called the Catholic Family Life Center, and started doing stained glass, and pretty soon his students who were at LSU wanted to learn how to do this because he was so excited about it. So he started teaching some students. That program grew to be one of the top institutions in the United States. I started working in his studio as an apprentice in about 1971 and fell in love with glass for many, many reasons and have continued working with stained glass to this day. Stained glass is a design process, and one of the things that my father really stressed was treating it as a process in which you go through a research, execution, design, and process of creativity. The way that we did that was by working with watercolor renderings. This is a watercolor rendering for a chapel which I'm working on. And as you can see, the line work is delineated. The color is chosen and done in watercolor because watercolor kind of has a fluid quality that's similar to the saturation of the color. I can also work with the value, which was very important. With light coming through there, you're really in control of value, texture, and form. Stained glass started in about the 8th century in Europe. And at that time they had about 12 colors of glass. Reds, orange, yellows, blues, the basic primary colors, some secondary colors, but the predominance of the color was blues and reds. Today, through modern chemistry, we have over 1,400 different colors. Stained glass comes in a sheet of glass from the manufacturer with the color already in it. It's part of a chemical process in which you add certain metallic oxides to the glass to give them their color. So we use fusing to laminate pieces of glass together using heat. We use glue to glue sections together to change the value and also the color, the exact color that we're looking for. Louis Comfort Tiffany, who is another famous stained glass artist, actually built his panels in different layers of stained glass panels back on top of each other like the chapel there at First Methodist in Baton Rouge has several different layers of glass stacked together to achieve one final result. Each piece of glass is held together in a matrix of lead, which is extruded product that is shaped kind of like an H in profile. So one piece of glass fits up against the other piece of glass, and then that is soldered together and puttied, or glazed they call that, together so that it's manufactured in almost like a mosaic combination of materials. One of the things that Paul was very emphatic about was line can be not only the separation between two colors, it can also be a graphic element in its own. During the 1970s, stained glass underwent a big resurgence. It went into the hobby market. It became very popular. I've been able to have a business doing stained glass since that time. I specifically wanted you to go see Chromatic Fantasia, which is a window that I did for the University Methodist Church. A woman had contacted me about this window, and she taught music and choir there for like 30 years. I wanted to combine my skill with glass blowing and my ideas about transparency and chromatic intervals in color and light with the stained glass windows. So I chose to do the rainbow of blown glass rondelles, they're called. They're about 18-inch platters that I blew. And then at the center of each one of those rondelles, I ground a little lens into the end of it so that when you look at the window, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of very rich color, but there are little lenses in the window that move and take your eye to different places. To me, the beauty about choir and singing is like praying twice. Isn't that what they say? So I wanted to make this window that had that type of intensity and combination of color and sound. I had kind of my reference point for that was Chromatic Fantasia, which is a symphony in which there's a very specific tonal pattern that's repeated over and over again. And in it, those chromatic sequences that are planned in the work come out, and it was kind of like a relationship with color and light. When I heard it, I was like, wow, that is color and light. When I was getting ready to graduate from LSU in 1976, I went to a conference called an NCECA conference, which is the National Ceramics Education Council conference. And at that conference, there was a man named Marvin Lepofsky who was giving a glass blowing demonstration in which he came into LSU with an assistant. They built a furnace in one day, lit it up, and had blown glass the next day. The next summer, I went to Penland School of Crafts in Penland, North Carolina, and took a glass blowing class. And from there, I fell in love with it and decided that I wanted to go to graduate school to study glass blowing. So I followed Marvin Lepofsky out to Oakland, California, and went to school at the California College of Arts and Crafts and was there for the next 3 years. When I started blowing glass, the emphasis was on making vessels. And most of them had the amphora type of 7 basic shapes that they use of the amphora. The first 2 years I blew glass, I was really just trying to get my technique down. I spent days and nights learning how to be a good glass blower. Symmetrical, thin, blown glass. At some point though, I'm an image maker. I was trained as an image maker, and I wanted to get my own imagery into the glass, and I wanted to start sculpting with the blown glass instead of making functional vessels. At that time, I started adding thick layers of glass to the sculpture that I could go back then and carve and sculpt the glass so that it became a different meaning for the work. The vessel became a metaphor for me. Glass blowing is the most magical dance of any process I've ever done making art. It is totally captivated with the colors that are in the blown glass come about from adding metallic oxides at different times in the glass blowing process. Like I use a very condensed color rod that's made very saturated colors. So by adding that to the end of the blowpipe or putting it into it with glass chips or shards or frit they call it, you can color and make the colors within the glass. And I really like transparent colors because the light can come through the glass. If you look at my work today, it's about the figure and the vessel and that relationship between those two things. I like the figure and the vessel because it is a metaphor for myself and for my feelings about humanity, about man in conflict, and the resolution between those two things. I have three things that I always try to work on. One is the technical craftsmanship level of it. I want my work to be polished. I want it to fit the form and the function. It's the message, it's the metaphor. This vessel and figure, what is the relationship between the two of them and what is it trying to say? The third level is, what does it have to do with glass? Why does it have to be made out of glass? Could it be made out of wood? Does your idea have to do with transparency and opacity and luminosity and the type of way that it handles light? And a lot of my work is illuminated with different types of lighting. Is very important to me. It's how the light is modulated and what message and how does that work to make my message stronger. I want to increase the way that my art is seen as something that evokes a process of healing in the person. It's almost like a meditation. If you bring joy to others through your artwork, I believe that that's part of a giving process. It's a loving kindness kind of process. About 7 years ago, I started studying Buddhism. At first, I thought it was just going to teach me how to meditate. It was going to teach me how to relax. It was going to teach me how to control my blood pressure. But I realized pretty quickly that Buddhism and meditation has an intention. It has a dedication. You don't meditate just for yourself. You learn through the loving kindness and compassion that you can bring that into the world and create that energy, not just for yourself, but the bodhicitta or the bodhisattva path is to bring that to others, to help other people reduce their suffering, not only your own. And this last series of work was about my brother having a stroke. We know more about the brain now than ever has been known in history. They're really finding out some of the very fundamental parts of the way the brain works. And I've always been fascinated with that, originally starting with an anthropological type of where did the early man come from? How did we progress in the evolutionary stages of mankind? But more recently in the mechanical processes of mental processes, memory, addiction, treatment of addiction, and those types of processes. As a result of that information, I wanted to make my work more of a healing arts product. I wanted to start working in more chapels in hospitals, even in churches. The metal work, I got into that in graduate school. I liked the flame and the metal and being able to form metals. Glass is really a type of metal in some ways because it's a mixture of metallic compounds, sand and soda and lime, and so that it's treated kind of like a metal. So it wasn't far from me, but the combination of steel and glass or iron and glass was very magical for me because it was kind of like the opaque and dull and very earthy aspect of the metal in contrast to the transparent, fluid, dynamic aspect of the glass. One of my favorite pieces that I've done that I thought was pivotal for me was called The Prison of Addiction. And in that piece, I had a blown glass vessel, but it was in the context of an eagle and a tower. Now, the story in mythology that kind of corresponds to that was when Sisyphus was told to roll the stone up the hill, and he would get it to the top of the hill and it would roll back down every time. And then there's another Greek reference in which a man is chained to a mountain on the side and the eagle would come and eat out his liver every day. And then it would regrow that night, and then it would come, and the same process would happen over again. That, to me, those are very powerful ideas that go to the core of what I think you have to get up every day and start again. Sumi painting was something that my father learned in Japan. He went to Japan in 1963 on a sabbatical from LSU. He came back from that trip and taught some of his students and taught me how to do that. It's a very glass-like medium. It's very immediate, it's very fluid, it's very transparent. You just got to get in there and just do it. Sumi ink is made from a stone. There's a very compressed ink stone that goes back thousands of years. It's what they use to do their calligraphy or their writing with, and they also use it for their paintings. It's a stone that's made from ash and a binder, gum arabic sometimes, or it's like carbon from like lampblack, and it's in a very condensed stone, and you grind it with water and you make your own ink. Many people ask me about the influence of my father's work and who my father was on my life. Yes, his influence in my art was great, but his influence on teaching me about the classics, about the importance of discipline, about sharing from the soul and making your work authentic, about not making excuses in life and being honest and humble and kind, caring and compassionate. That's the influence that has stuck with me more than anything else.
Whatever the season, there's no reason to stay home in Louisiana because this state hosts more cultural events than you can shake a stick at. So here's a list of cool things coming soon to a town near you. To learn more about these and other events in Louisiana, keep your eyes peeled for a copy of Country Roads magazine. And while we're at it, LPB's Art Rocks website features an archive of previous episodes, so to see any episode again, just log on to lpb.org. Now, here's a tale for all of us who know what it's like to fall short at one thing, only to discover joy and success in something else entirely. As a youth, Ohioan Brent Naughton dreamed of just one thing: professional baseball. But when he didn't make the cut, Naughton turned to art. As a portraitist now specializing in athletes and everyday heroes, he discovered how his passion for sports allowed him to be a different kind of champion.
From Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, we bid you welcome to Reds baseball.
It sounds odd, but I think in the second grade, I decided I was going to be one of two things: either the center fielder for the Reds or an artist. I would draw every day, and I played sports, loved sports, and when my talent ran out in high school, I stayed on with the art. Eli's Barbecue is a low-key, relaxed joint. Everything about it kind of feels like home, and the artwork, I think my style fits into it. Whether we have blues or jazz musicians on the walls, it's fun to go in there and sit and eat and hear what people have to say. I rotate the walls a couple times a year. We try to play with an opening day show every year for the Reds. And then if topics come up throughout the year, I try to put down some artwork that may play to that, where the city kind of feels it. the main reason I'm drawn to baseball is being in Cincinnati. Growing up, I'm a big Red Machine kid, and then moving forward to the '90 team. You know, that was one more great squad that the folks in Cincinnati just, you know, it's part of their growing up. I try to incorporate a lot of the emotion, the passion of the players, the moments in time, whether it's an action shot or something like a portrait of a young athlete. I think the detail in my work is probably goes back to the eyes. I think in a lot of the artwork, if you take a look at the eyes, you can really see something in there. There's a spark of a young player, or you know, somebody trying to find the ball, kind of in an action shot. My artwork is made up of layering. Each piece is a combination of colored pencil and acrylic paint, and I layer those two on top of each other. I take the pencil sketch and work just in a dark brown colored pencil, and then I spray that with workable fixative, and then start the process of putting on a wash, an acrylic wash, over top of the colored pencils, and then just repeat that. I try to bring out the colors off of the background, and just you continue to layer until it really pops off the background. Some folks think that the artwork is done on a panel of wood as well, and it's just started with a white illustration board. We do a layer of like usually brown colored pencil, and then I use raw umber acrylic paint on top of that, and I layer up to maybe 7 times until we have something that we're happy with.
Back to the boot for this week's Louisiana Treasures segment. If you haven't visited the LSU Museum of Natural Sciences, you're really missing out. In addition to a mind-boggling collection of birds, the facility houses a wide variety of taxidermied mammals and other beasts. So here's museum's director, Rob Brumfield, to give us a tour.
The Museum of Natural Science really is one of the well-hidden jewels on campus, and as director, one of my goals is to make it more known. One of our most popular exhibits here at the museum is Mike 1, so the original Mike the Tiger. When Mike 1 passed away, they preserved his carcass, and the taxidermist here at the time, Ambrose Degri, who created all of the dioramas here at the museum, had never prepared a tiger before. It's not a native species, never seen one. So they went to a lot of effort to find the mold and everything that they needed to do to make a good mount. And so this is the original Mike the Tiger. If you want to see Mike 1, you can come right over here to the Foster Hall in the museum. In those early days, we had a lot of trophy hunters that were interested in making donations of their specimens to the museum. So, for example, the Museum of Natural Science here in Baton Rouge has 2 taxidermic mounts of polar bears, for example. We also have a grizzly bear. We have, as you can see, moose, buffalo heads, porcupine, caribou. So it's not just Louisiana mammals and birds that you can see here. You can really get a taste for diversity around the world. I think one of the most interesting aspects of the dioramas is that if you look at them, they're very amazing artistically. So they have a painted background that has incredible detail. So whether you're looking at a lowland tropical rainforest in Costa Rica, or if you're looking at a montane region of Colorado, or if you're out in the coastal marsh, you'll see incredible detail in the background. We like all organisms here, so we've got a nice representative of the snakes one can find in Louisiana, both venomous and non-venomous. The vast majority are, of course, non-venomous. We have a nice insect display that captures not just insects in Louisiana, but a diversity of insects from around the globe. But just getting back to the dioramas themselves, most of the dioramas here will feature one of the Louisiana sites, but the museum is known worldwide for its tropical research, and that began with George Lowry, our founding director. And so in those days, they also made a trip to Costa Rica so that they could capture animals and mammals and plants that they could use in a diorama here. We have an event on Saturday mornings once a month called Special Saturdays, where the kids get to come in here, see all the exhibits, and we also have them do some little exercise related to learning about plants and animals in Louisiana.
And that is that for this edition of Art Rocks. But remember, art lover, you can always watch episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks. And if that's not enough for you, Country Roads magazine is a great resource for enriching your cultural life with art, cuisine, escapes and events all across the state. So until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thank you for watching.